Sarah, a wealthy woman, entered the elegant restaurant like she was the star of a show. Wearing a designer dress that fit her sculpted body perfectly, she exuded an aura of superiority. Her high heels echoed on the polished wooden floor, and the other patrons turned to look at her, feeling a mix of admiration and discomfort. Finally a place that matches my style, she murmured to herself, not realizing her voice carried a tone of disdain. Spotting Marcus behind the counter, she paused. He was a black man with short hair and a warm smile, chatting with an employee. Sarah's expression hardened when she noticed his simple shirt and apron. I hope he's not the one serving me, she thought, striding to a table with determined steps. Excuse me, waiter, she began, with a tone that left no doubt about her expectations. I want the best wine in the house and a dish that's not on the menu. Something truly impressive. Sarah looked around, assessing the luxurious setting, and frowned at the decor, which she found insufficiently sophisticated. And please, before I forget, could you replace these flowers? They're awful. Waiter Adam watched her walk away, his heart racing, but he felt a sense of relief. He knew he had done the right thing. Though Sarah's attitude had bothered him, he was determined not to be shaken by prejudice and arrogance. What would happen next was beyond his control, but one thing was certain. He was not willing to bow to oppression. Sorry, ma'am, but we can't fulfill that request. The house wine is excellent, and I can suggest a dish from the menu, he replied, staying calm. His demeanor was dignified, and he tried not to let her attitude affect him. How dare you tell me what I can or cannot order? He exclaimed, her gaze piercing. You must understand that I'm paying for a service. I want something exclusive, not just any customer. The indignation in her voice was palpable, and some people at nearby tables began to glance at each other, uncomfortable with the unfolding scene. I understand, ma'am, but I can't fulfill a request that's not on the menu. I can offer other suggestions that are highly appreciated by our customers, Adam said, unflustered. He was aware that the conversation was becoming awkward. With a decisive movement, Sarah stood up, her long, elegant legs crossing the space to the counter. Marcus braced himself, recalling the lessons he'd learned since starting in the restaurant industry. Always keep your composure, even when dealing with difficult customers. But this time, he had no intention of backing down. How can I help? He asked, keeping a neutral tone. Sarah looked at him with disdain, as if evaluating an uninteresting object. Are you the waiter? Questioned with a short, sarcastic laugh. I'd prefer to speak with the manager if you don't mind. Marcus, holding his breath and trying to stay calm, didn't let it shake him. Actually, I'm the owner of the restaurant, and I can't meet demands that don't respect our menu. Sarah's eyes narrowed, fury beginning to surface. What do you mean by that? I'm talking about a specific dish that I want. You could make an effort to please an important customer. Isn't that what's expected from a place like this? Her words were venomous, and the room seemed to grow colder around Marcus. He looked at her, the self-confidence radiating from his posture, and decided he wouldn't give in. I understand that you have preferences, but I can't prepare something that's not on the menu. Thank you for your understanding. A heavy silence settled as Sarah's friends watched the scene, some with expressions of shock and others with slight smiles, as if they were watching a show. You can't just ignore what I want, Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising, drawing the attention of other customers. You don't serve me, I'll have to speak to the manager about this. I am the manager, Marcus replied, his voice unwavering. And I can't serve someone who doesn't show respect for the people who work here. Sarah's expression instantly changed, disbelief turning into anger. So you think you can ignore me? This is unacceptable. I'll leave a negative review. Nothing less than special treatment is acceptable for someone like me. Marcus took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. I'm sorry you feel that way. However, I can't fulfill an unreasonable request. Sarah rolled her eyes, but there was doubt in her expression. What she didn't know was that Marcus's attitude wasn't a sign of weakness, but a strength he had cultivated over his journey. Her indignation was a demonstration of her own insecurity, which made her even more pathetic in Marcus's eyes. You'll regret this, she said with venom in her voice as she turned to leave. Marcus just watched her, his heart beating a little faster, but his decision firmly rooted. He knew he couldn't let people like Sarah trample over others without consequence. Sarah, in her insatiable quest for revenge, felt like a queen on a throne of broken glass. The humiliation she had suffered in Marcus's restaurant consumed her inside, and the idea that he, a black man, had dared. With agile fingers, she began typing on her smartphone, her words filled with disdain. I would never go to a place where the owner doesn't know how to treat real customers. This is a clear example of poor management, he posted on her social media, accompanied by a photo of the restaurant. Notifications started popping up quickly. Her followers, many of them influential friends in the social world, wasted no time sharing her outrage. I'm shocked. I'll never go to that place again, commented a friend with a large following. Sarah smiled as she saw the wave of support. What she didn't realize, however, was that her smear campaign was starting to attract more critical eyes. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Marcus felt the pressure mounting. The noise of the tables and the aroma of the dishes were overshadowed by the silence that settled around him. With a keen eye, he watched the activity on social media, noticing that his name, along with his restaurant, was being dragged through a whirlwind of accusations. The indignation he felt was deep, but he knew that if he kept his head held high and maintained his dignity, he could overcome this. Marcus, did you see what she's posting? Asked one of the waitresses, her eyes wide. She's saying you're a terrible owner and the service here is shoddy. She has so many followers. This could affect our business, insisted the worried waitress. If people prefer to believe the lies of a woman who thinks she's superior, then we don't want them here, said Marcus, looking directly into her eyes. We're building something bigger than just a restaurant. We're building respect. As the restaurant continued to operate, Sarah was at home, immersed in a sea of comments and likes. She felt powerful, as if she was finally getting what she wanted. I think I'll do a series of posts about how the service here is unacceptable, she said to herself, with a satisfied smile. But her joy soon faded when she saw that some people began sharing images of her, in other establishments, mistreating employees. Look at this. It's the same woman who was at the restaurant. She was yelling at the waiter at the corner cafe, commented one user, and the hashtag #HagSarahTheAbuser began to circulate. The revelation of her abusive behavior in other places quickly gained traction, and the situation started to turn against her. With each passing day, the protective bubble Sarah had built was unraveling. What once seemed like an easy battle had become a war she didn't know how to fight. With her reputation at risk, she found herself cornered, surrounded by a truth she never wanted to face. Her arrogance and disdain for others were finally being exposed. The reflection of her distorted image seemed to mock her. Who cares what these people think? I'm Sarah. I'm better than this. But deep down, a voice whispered that the real battle wasn't against Marcus or the others, but against her own nature. The backlash from Sarah's accusations spread like wildfire, reaching not only social media, but also conversations in cafes, offices, and even schools across the city. While Marcus began to receive unwavering support from the local community and his fellow restaurant owners, Sarah found herself ensnared in a web of her own venom. The messages flooding her social media were increasingly cutting, full of criticism and exposure. Did you really think you could treat people like that and get away with it? Read one message that stood out among the many others. Sarah, sitting in her luxurious apartment, looked at her phone screen with a mix of disbelief and desperation. Notifications popped up, some even with embarrassing photos of her, like when she demanded a non-existent dish on the menu. This isn't fair, she screamed, throwing the phone onto the marble table. Her reflection in the window glass showed a woman who, despite all her privileges, was losing control. They don't know who they're dealing with, she murmured to herself, trying to convince herself that she still had some authority over the situation. At that moment, one of her closest friends decided to visit her. Lucas, with a concerned look, entered the apartment and sat in front of her. Sarah, you need to understand that this is getting out of hand. People are not on your side now. What you did was unacceptable. She stared at him, a mix of anger and frustration. You're on their side now? Since when did you become one of them, Lucas? I'm the victim here, she responded, her eyes filled with tears of indignation. Victim? Do you really think you can play that role? Lucas questioned, his voice firm. You disrespected not only Marcus but all the employees who work hard every day. What you did was humiliating and people are just standing up against that. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to suppress the reality surrounding her. I can't be seen like this, he whispered, more to herself than to Lucas. She knew her image was at stake. The weight of the truth was crushing her. The messages kept pouring in, each one more cutting than the last. Look, if you don't do something about this quickly, it's only going to get worse, Lucas warned, standing up. You need to apologize. Admit you were wrong. Apologize? To whom? She retorted, disdainful. In addition to the bombardment of messages, she began to notice that her contacts, once so loyal, were distancing themselves. No one wanted to associate with her, and the rumors about her behavior spread like an epidemic. In a moment of desperation, she decided she needed a strategy. If I can defend myself, maybe all of this will calm down, she thought, typing frantically a response to the criticism flooding her social media. Dear followers, I ask that you look beyond appearances and consider that everyone has bad days, she wrote, trying to ease the situation. But as she clicked send, she felt her words were empty, like a desperate attempt to cover a fire with a cup of water. Meanwhile, Marcus at his restaurant received messages of support from customers and friends. You are not alone, Marcus. We are with you, said a note left by a loyal customer who also owned a nearby cafe. He looked around, seeing the movement increase and the atmosphere fill with laughter and conversation. The contrast with Sarah's situation was palpable. It's impressive how a single action can change everything. She thought she could bring me down, but in reality she united the community, Marcus reflected as he watched his employees who worked happily and motivated despite the challenges faced. The dignity of his business was a victory that could not be erased by a single person, regardless of how much power she thought she had. The atmosphere inside Marcus's restaurant was tense. Tables, elegantly set, now seemed like silent witnesses to an imminent confrontation. Sarah, with a face marked by frustration and smudged makeup, took a deep breath before walking through the door. Clinking of glasses and the murmur of customers ceased for a moment, and all eyes turned to her. The woman who had tried to destroy the reputation of a place that, until then, was beloved by the community. Marcus, she began, her voice trembling but trying to sound firm. I need to talk to you. Marcus behind the counter watched her with a look that mixed disdain and compassion. He had heard the rumors, complaints, and the lies that Sarah spread. What was once a welcoming space was now impregnated with palpable tension. He approached slowly, unhurried. Sarah, he responded with a calm that defied the storm she brought with her. What do you want? She hesitated. Words seemed stuck in her throat. I am here to apologize, she said, trying to contain the anger boiling inside her. What I did was unacceptable. But you need to understand that I was under pressure. I just wanted you to reconsider your actions. Pressure? Marcus repeated, raising an eyebrow. Pressure was what you imposed on your employees, don't you think? Did you forget? And now you come here expecting me to forget all of this just because you're in trouble? Sarah's heart raced. She knew she had made mistakes, but the idea of being confronted with her own hypocrisy made her even more anxious. Please don't do this, she pleaded, her voice now a whisper filled with desperation. I can change. I promise I'll behave better. Just take back what you said about me. Marcus crossed his arms, watching her with a gaze that conveyed no compassion, only unwavering firmness. And why should I do that? What you did was awful, and now you need to face the consequence. The restaurant, which had once been a refuge, now felt like a courtroom where Sarah found herself sentenced by her own action. She felt heat rising to her face, shame consuming her. I am a customer. You can't treat me like this, she said, trying to regain some of her former power. Customer? Sarah, did you forget that respect is a two-way street? Marcus replied, his voice steady. You didn't just treat me like an inferior employee, but you also made a point to belittle everyone around you. And now, when things aren't going well for you, you want me to just turn the page. Sarah's frustration overflowed. Can't leave me like this. This is absurd. She looked around as if hoping someone would intervene, but the other patrons just watched, some with discreet smiles of satisfaction. Absurd is what you did to my staff. Marcus retorted without hesitation. You have no idea of the damage you caused, not just to me, but to everyone who works here and whom you disregarded. What you need to understand is that actions have consequences, and you are now living yours. Marcus's words echoed in the empty space around them, and Sarah realized that no matter how hard she tried to reverse the situation, control she always had was slipping away. But I'm someone important, she said, her voice almost imploring. I can help you and your rest, Marcus asked, his voice calm but firm. I have evidence, Sarah. Evidence of your behavior, and it's not just your actions here, but everything you've done in your own company. Sarah hesitated, her legs trembling. Evidence? What evidence? You can't do this. I'm a customer, and you should be serving me. You can't treat me like this. Her voice, which once sounded full of power, now revealed a growing panic. Marcus crossed his arms, unyielding. You don't get it, do you? Dignity and respect are not privileges you can buy with your status. They are achievements that need to be respected by everyone. And you disrespected them not only with me, but with many others. It was at this moment that the restaurant door creaked open, and a man whom Sarah immediately recognized entered. It was Alex, a former employee of her company, abruptly and unjustly fired months ago. He looked nervous but determined. Marcus, I can't stay silent about what she did anymore. I saw how you were treated, and I can't let this go, Alex said. Sarah looked at Alex with horror. What are you doing here? You have no right to interfere in my life. Her voice was laden with desperation and anger. Sorry, Sarah, but I can't stay silent. You fired me without cause just because I asked for fairer treatment for all employees. You were always cruel, and what happened here is just the tip of the iceberg. You need to be held accountable for your actions, Alex said, his gaze challenging. Marcus, observing the interaction, felt a mix of relief and empathy. He knew Alex's testimony could be the key to exposing Sarah's true nature. She not only mistreated the staff here, but was also responsible for unfair dismissals in her own company, Alex. Your voice can make a difference. Sarah, realizing she was cornered, began to panic. That's not true. You're lying. I'm the victim here. Her attempt to flip the narrative, however, sounded increasingly hollow. If you hadn't behaved this way, maybe you wouldn't be in this position now, Marcus said, his gaze fixed on the woman who once thought herself invincible. People don't forget how you treated them. And now the truth is coming out. I can change, Sarah pleaded, her voice breaking. I can be a better person, please. Marcus just shook his head, his look compassionate but determined. It's not about what you can do now, but what you did before. And that can't be erased with empty promises. With that, Sarah realized her influence and power had disappeared, and the reality of her actions was revealing itself in all its harshness. She had set herself on a path of destruction, and now, the community, as well as her past, was about to make her face the consequence. Marcus, with his head held high, saw the transformation around him. The restaurant, which had been a place of oppression for many, now became a symbol of resilience and dignity. While Sarah faced the weight of her actions, Marcus felt a new breath of hope. His restaurant would thrive, not just as a business, but as a place where respect and empathy would always be prioritized. Sarah, in her apartment, felt destroyed.